Hi. I am a different Christian. Hi. Hello. My name is Christian, if you're new here, and if you're not, then you already know that as of this May, I will have been living on the road full-time for 5 years. This journey began for me in 2013 when I left the corporate world to spend some time backpacking internationally. And I eventually landed in Big Sur, California. And that's where I slowly began to build my career as an outdoor adventure photographer. 4 years later, I found myself living in Seattle, and my apartment lease was about to end. I made the decision to donate, sell, or store pretty much all of my belongings, and I moved into my SUV. It was a Nissan Xterra. It was only supposed to be a summer experiment, but I wound up falling madly in love with the road, and I stayed in my SUV for 14 months before deciding to invest in this custom-built van, which has been my home for almost 4 years now. Officially, I haven't had an actual apartment or home to call my own since May of 2018, which is still pretty wild to me. Like, it was never supposed to go this long. A couple years ago, I put together a video called 10 Tips for Getting Started in Van Life, where I went into a lot of detail about my journey and some practical tips for getting started with this lifestyle. I'll touch on a few of those things in this video, as well as some points I made in my 10 Reasons Why Van Life Sucks video, but I also want to bypass some of the more obvious points and dive into some more personal thoughts on like deeper topics. I mentioned in a previous video that I want to start experimenting and trying some new things. And that's kind of what I'm hoping to do here and in future talking videos. I just want to start conversations and share knowledge that I've gained over the years based on my own experiences with this lifestyle, in hopes of offering some value to those of you who are interested in taking a similar path. This might be a bit of a ramble. I don't know. I'm just gonna try it, and y'all let me know what you think in the comments below, I guess. So let's dive in. Why the heck would anyone ever want to live in a van? You have to be pretty passionate about this way of life, or at least your reason for doing it, to actually enjoy it for any real length of time. Yes, it can be adventurous, it can be beautiful, it can be liberating, it can be all of those things 100%. However, it can also be incredibly challenging, isolating, gross, and weird. Ask yourself, really, like, why do you want to do this? Is it to save money by not paying rent? Is it to travel full time and see the country? Are you craving freedom or a fresh start? Or did you maybe see pretty photos on Instagram or dreamy scenes on YouTube and decide this is the life for you? I can tell you why I pursued this lifestyle. My 5-year relationship had just fallen apart. I really wanted a fresh start. I didn't want to throw money away on rent, and I was craving new adventures. And frankly, I just got tired of driving back and forth to my apartment to swap out gear and do laundry. I was still trying to build my career as an outdoor adventure photographer, and living on the road actually facilitated and supported that path because it allowed me to expand my portfolio by traveling to all sorts of landscapes and spending 2 to 3 weeks in a singular location rather than just like 1 or 2 days and then having to pick up and go. And that allowed me to witness different weather and lighting conditions, and that's how you really get the best shots. So for me, it made sense. Now I'm at a point where I'm beginning to ask myself if it still makes sense. I've been doing this for so long now that I'm kind of just ready to try new things. That's kind of an evolving thought process right now, and we'll save that for another video. Last year, I put together a video titled 10 Reasons Why Van Life Sucks. And I cannot tell you how many comments I received saying something to the effect of, duh, tell me something I don't know. And as someone who has lived in both a van and an SUV, I can say that in my experience, people leaned more toward enthusiasm whenever I showed them the van, but borderline concern when I'd show them my sleeping setup in the SUV. Not everyone, of course, but generally speaking. In other words, there's quite a bit of stigma surrounding this lifestyle, and sadly, it can oftentimes be amplified depending on the condition and cleanliness of your vehicle. I mean, we all kind of know that already, right? Like, it's pretty much the same when it comes to actual housing, like who has the bigger house or who has the better car or whatever. There are some pretty strong opinions out there that all van lifers are a drain on society, or a bunch of rich kids just living off of trust funds, or worse, glorifying homelessness. And this is something that I want to touch on briefly because I have kind of a nuanced perspective on this. My mom had me when she had just turned 17, and we jumped from place to place. We lived with my grandparents, we lived in a basement, guest bedrooms, her car. I know what it's like, at least as a child, to not have a home when that's really all that you want. And there are so many people, especially today, who are living in vehicles by circumstance and not by choice. I think that sometimes it's easy to generalize people who live in their vehicles as a certain kind of person, depending on the way that you see the world. There is a subset of people who view this lifestyle as a stain on society. Like, it's something that you should be ashamed of. To be very open and honest, my biological father is one of those people. When I moved onto the road, he made it very clear that he viewed my decision to live in an SUV as shameful, irresponsible, and embarrassing. And as far as I know, he still feels that way. I am incredibly fortunate that the rest of my family and also my friends have been supportive and encouraging as I've wandered down this path, but I know that might not be your situation. So I share this for those of you who maybe don't have the support and encouragement that you deserve. And I hope that in spite of that, you'll still allow yourself to dream and just personally define what it is that you want and what skills and gifts you have to offer the world, and whether or not this lifestyle can help you get there. Sometimes what we really need is just time, especially when it comes to creative endeavors. And if eliminating a monthly rent payment can ease your financial responsibilities just enough that it frees up your time and energy to focus elsewhere, be that school or work or like learning a new skill, then that alone might be worth it. Just be aware and prepare yourself for potential labels and judgments to be cast your way. Honestly, the best advice I can offer to prepare for those moments that you might encounter out on the road are just to remind yourself why you wanted this in the first place. And if you have that deep sense of self and knowing, then, that's all you really need. Easier said than done, though. I personally am accused of being a trust fund baby on a fairly regular basis, which honestly, if there is a trust fund out there with my name on it, I will take it. I'd love to know. I unfortunately am not a trust fund baby. I also do not have a sugar daddy, unless we count you, the viewers who so kindly watch my videos and support my sponsorships. I want to take a quick minute to thank today's sponsor, AG1. I've been using AG1 for 3 months now, and it's actually the first time that I've been consistent in sticking with a vitamin routine for more than a week. Living on the road can sometimes mean limited access to food variety and storage, and AG1 helps to bridge any of those nutritional gaps in my diet. It's become an easy and effortless part of my routine, which has actually inspired me to habit stack and implement other positive changes, like regular exercise, cutting back on sugar, and daily meditation. I personally like to drink my AG1 in the morning or before my first meal, and I genuinely love the taste of it. There's no added sugar, but it still has this perfect sweet taste. So guys, be sure to check out AG1 using my link here below to support my channel, and more importantly, just to try it out for yourself. I am really curious to hear what you think and if you love it as much as I do. So thank you, AG1, for sponsoring this video, and let's get into it. Once you've figured out your why, you've got to try it out. And this could be as simple as tossing a blow-up camping mattress in your backseat, or as specific as renting your dream rig and taking it out for a couple weeks. If you don't have a vehicle that you can sleep in, consider buying a camping tent and using that to sleep in pretty much every night. It's going to limit your experience in terms of where you can sleep, but you'll still get a really decent understanding of what it's like to live in a small space and with minimal conveniences. I would really recommend that you spend at least 2 weeks out on the road and see how that goes. And I would also say try to resist the urge to stay at a bunch of paid campsites and make sure you're spending at least some of that time alone. This stuff is really, really important because after 2 weeks, you're going to know fairly well whether or not you love it or you hate it. Allow me to illustrate. I've been flirting with the idea of bangs. I wound up buying fake bangs on Amazon instead to just like test them out. I don't have a mirror. I have no idea how this looks. I don't know. What do we think? Bangs or no bangs? Okay, I'm back. Boring me, no bangs version. You guys get what I'm putting down, right? Like, test it before you buy it. And testing out this lifestyle first is also going to help you understand what kind of rig to invest in. Like, do you want an SUV? Do you want a used van? Do you want a new van, a schoolie, an RV? Do you want to build it yourself? Do you want to hire a team to do it? Is it possible that you could make your current vehicle work? Does it need a dedicated workspace? Or will you need a massive power supply? Will you have a surfboard or mountain bikes or a pet? How are you going to shower? How will you use the bathroom? And how will you cook on the road? So apart from overnight parking, these are the 3 almost daily hurdles that you're going to face when living in a vehicle. For showers, I rely on gym memberships, campgrounds, I have a solar bag, and truck stops are an option, but to be honest, I've still actually never used one in all of my years on the road. They're $15, and I just think that's really expensive because a gym membership is like $30 for a whole month. That's just my opinion. When I lived in the SUV, I didn't have any kind of toilet, and when I moved into the van, I had a number 1 only toilet for I guess 3 years. And it's only like recently, last summer, that I got a composting toilet. And I cannot recommend it enough. Let's talk about food. It's a great segue. When it comes to cooking, it's important to consider your normal eating habits and how living on the road might impact them, especially if you like to eat a lot of fresh vegetables and or cook. You might want to invest in a cooler or a fridge or a stove. And there are a ton of options. But I will say that maintaining some level of familiarity and normality will help you stay grounded and like feeling healthy. So all of these things together will be really helpful in determining what kind of rig you're working towards so that you can move to the next question, which is, can you afford this? A common misconception is that van life is cheap. And yes, there is a spectrum. It can be cheap. But the way I look at it, the major savings is your monthly rent / mortgage payment. But from that savings, you need to consider new expenses like maybe a vehicle loan, park and campground fees, the occasional hotel or Airbnb stay, showers, laundry, unexpected repairs, maintenance, mail forwarding services, storage unit rental fees, out-of-pocket dental and doctor appointments if you don't have nationwide health insurance or any health insurance. Also, ask yourself, are you able to part with most of the things in your home? Because living in a van that feels like an overstuffed closet can be a claustrophobic experience, and I don't recommend it. Unless you're retired or you have a way of funding your travels indefinitely, you're also going to want to think about how you'll sustain your travels. Some people travel short term and live off of their savings while others work remotely. I personally am a freelance photographer and videographer. So that's how I earn my income on the road. And there are so many ways to work remotely. I actually did put together a video about that. I'll link it up here. 10 ways to work remotely, something like that. But the conversation doesn't really end there because working for yourself, it sounds really wonderful, and like, don't get me wrong, it is. I love it. I work for myself. I've been doing it for a long time, and I absolutely would not trade it for anything. But it is a big adjustment from working for an employer or even from working in a stationary office in your home. Imagine that you're parked at the edge of the Grand Canyon and it's just beautiful outside. But you have a deadline, and so you have to sit inside your van, stare at your computer screen, and put together a spreadsheet. Not that big of a deal, right? But now imagine having to do that 5 days a week. Always someplace new and beautiful that you'd rather go explore. It's kind of like someone putting a plate of fresh baked cookies in front of your face alongside a plate of raw broccoli, and you have to find the willpower to eat the broccoli instead of the cookies every single day. For me personally, I've found that willpower is a limited resource, and working remotely in beautiful places requires a lot of it. That's just been my experience. Hopefully yours will be different. Now I want to address everyone's favorite question. But doesn't it get lonely out there on the road? Yes. Yes, it does. Absolutely. It also gets lonely in a house with a mouse. Loneliness can happen anywhere, to anyone, with anyone. That said, living on the road is uniquely different. Like, our society is not conducive to this way of living. And as a result, you can start to feel a little adrift and disconnected from the real world. Like you're living on the fringe and maybe a bit of an outcast. I have personally felt this more in the past year than ever before. But, I think that's because I was going through a breakup. I was really focused on a lot of personal growth, and I just didn't want to be around people. I just wanted to be alone. Like, alone. Like, little old lady living on a mountain who never comes down alone. Thankfully, those clouds began to part months ago, but the overall effect was one of extreme disconnectedness. And as an introvert, I'm pretty comfortable in that zone, but I have discovered that it does have its limits. If you're also an introvert and looking into this lifestyle, beware the pitfall of becoming too isolated. On the road, it's so easy to avoid people if you want to. We're literally like turtles in our little houses on our backs, and it's so comfortable and familiar to just curl up inside our little forts on wheels and hide away from the world. And add to that the fact that you're less likely to bump into someone you know at a coffee shop in a city that you're only passing through, or meet up with friends at like a weekly CrossFit class because you're rarely in one place long enough to actually become a regular, or even to just like see someone you know while out walking your dog. The beauty of living mobile is that the pendulum can swing wildly from an introvert's paradise to an extrovert's dream. It really is very customizable, but you have to be really intentional about it. And if you're an extrovert, I can't help you. I have learned extroverted tendencies, but I am an introvert through and through. However, I will say that there are so many cool people out there in this community who are also road lifers or just genuinely interested in this lifestyle. And I get the impression that if you just open your side door for a while and like sit outside, chances are you'll make a new friend before the day is done. But, I can't really speak on that because I tend to hide like a weirdo. A lack of community in combination with bouts of loneliness can really start to weigh on you. But this doesn't just apply to van life. Like you can find yourself in a similar situation, like I said, by living in a house or an apartment. And the thing to understand is that the road doesn't have built-in conveniences or community in the way that most modern societies do. And so most things are going to require an extra level of effort. And your job is really to determine if that extra effort is worth the trade-offs of living on the road. Sometimes the things we love about the road over time become the things that challenge us the most. Having routines, for example. Like, I love that I wake up and decide that day what it is I feel like doing. I love the freedom of, hold on. I'm so thirsty. I love the freedom to just pick up and go. Like, it's fun, it's exciting, it's kind of a dopamine hit that I've unfortunately become accustomed to at this point. But that same lack of routine causes me all kinds of stress as well. For example, waking up somewhere new every day means constantly navigating unfamiliar roads and educating myself on state laws and local ordinances and understanding where I can and can't legally park overnight. I mentioned a while back that I was pulled over for a speeding ticket in Arizona for going 60 on what I thought was a 55 road. This cop pulled out about 2 minutes after I'd pulled out from my camping spot. I hadn't even passed a speed limit sign at that point. And he gave me a ticket for going 55 in a 45 zone. But not before saying first that the speed limit turns to 55 in another mile And then people get confused all the time. Like, that's $130 I wouldn't have had to pay if I had just lived in that area and known that. I'm still annoyed by that. Things like doctor and dentist appointments, having a car mechanic you always go to, a hairstylist you love, a cafe that you prefer. Those things are tough to maintain when you're constantly moving around. And in my experience, they can actually prove kind of costly because you're relying on trial and error to find people you trust in various new cities like all the time. Now, if your plan is to have a home base of your own, or maybe return to your parents' house a couple times every year to run all of these errands, that's perfect. If you're like me and your parents live in the eastern US, it will get kind of exhausting driving 44 hours each way every time you need your teeth cleaned and your oil changed. This leads me to the next point of figuring out how you will receive mail, vote, and pay taxes. This has to be one of the single greatest headaches for me personally during my 5 years on the road. In the state of Washington, it's legal to live in an RV. So luckily, I've been able to register my vehicle and get a driver's license and a few other things using a private mailbox, which I renew every few months. However, I have been reluctant to share this in the past because I don't know how legal this is. But running a business from a private mailbox is tricky. I've had countless calls with the Washington Department of Revenue explaining my situation because as a small business owner, I'm responsible for paying quarterly business and occupation tax. And they have told me, yes, of course, I must pay it, but I have to actually live at the address that I use. So it's like I can either use this private mailbox address that I don't live at, or I can just not pay my taxes. So obviously I choose to pay my taxes, but it sucks feeling like an outlaw just for existing as a road lifer. Another recent example of this has to do with banking, which, by the way, before you move onto the road and while you still have a legal address, I would urge you to open any necessary bank accounts or credit cards that you intend to use. Renew your passport and driver's license, open your private mailbox, get insurance, and register your vehicle. After doing my taxes this past year, I decided to open a self-employed IRA because up to that point, my only retirement was a 401k with my former employer, and I was no longer able to deposit funds there since I don't work there anymore. So I called that bank to inquire about opening an account, and they walked me through everything, only to have it turned down at the end of the process because my address was a private mailbox. So then I called two of my other banks and ran into the same exact issue. All I wanted to do was literally give these banks my money, and they were treating me like some kind of criminal because I don't live in an actual house. To be fair, like every customer service rep I spoke with was incredibly kind, really sympathetic to my living situation. But I mean, the institutions themselves, the society that we live in, it practically punishes people like us who choose to live outside the lines. And this is kind of becoming a mini rant because I also get a fair amount of comments claiming that van lifers don't pay taxes, which, trust me, we do. I personally pay far more taxes now than I did when I was living in a house working a corporate job. And I just have to wonder, like, what the heck? Why is it that society is so insistent that we all live exactly like one another? Why are you the way that you are? Okay, I think that's a good place to end this video. No, not really. I still have quite a few other topics to cover, including health insurance, overnight parking, bathroom things, all of that good stuff. And I'm going to work on putting that together for you guys, like a part 2 of this video. I think ideally it would be cool to have these more casual commentary type videos, if you can call them that. On a somewhat weekly basis, if I can stick to that, and keep the vlogging videos on the regular once a month schedule, because those other videos take a lot of time to shoot and edit, and I like them to have kind of a dreamlike quality because it's my creative outlet. It's my art. Obviously, you guys know that I love this lifestyle. It's easily been one of the best decisions I've ever made. But there's also this other side of van life that is also very real and sometimes overlooked and like hard to integrate into my other artistic work. And I don't know, I just think it might be interesting to chat about this stuff. So that's it for this video. Stay tuned for part 2 if you enjoyed this one. Thank you so much for being here. I really, really appreciate you guys. Thank you for all of your support and kind comments. And yeah, I will see you soon. I really just winked to the camera. Oh my God.